Hello, this is Samantha Nolan-Smith, CEO and founder of the School of Visibility, and just sending away a little message from Facebook. And I wanted to talk today about what this week has taught us about your visibility strategy. So when I refer to this week, I'm speaking specifically, you may or may not have received this news in other parts of the world, but due to a convoluted attempt by the current Australian government to support legacy media and build a sustainable business model, they've been embroiled in in negotiations with Google and Facebook, who they're trying to get to pay legacy media because nobody else wants to pay them. Anyway, it's a flawed idea and it's a flawed piece of legislation, and what it has ended up doing is causing Facebook to say we're not showing any news on the feed in Australia. So we're not getting any Australian news on our feed. Of course, we can go to other websites and get it, and so on and so forth. But that's quite devastating for particularly for smaller media outlets who and regional papers and so forth who relied on Facebook to connect with people. So why is this useful for us to know? Because as small business owners, one of the things that I talk about a lot in Women Speaking Up is about your visibility strategy. We develop a visibility strategy because you don't want to just be everywhere doing everything. You want to be much more streamlined, much more focused, so that you don't feel like every minute of every day is about trying to be visible and get on all the platforms and do all of that. And one of the core pieces of your visibility strategy, the strategy that I always recommend, is to build your email list. And that's what this week really has shown everybody, or reminded everybody, that if you don't put your energies there and you're just relying on a social media platform to build your community, then at any moment, some decision could be made by that company, which then removes all of your posts or takes away your community entirely, takes away your account, and all of a sudden you don't have the platform you used to have. Just ask Donald Trump what that's like. And so building your email list is so important. The general way or the accepted way in the online industry at the moment around building your email list is to develop an opt-in, which is a free resource that encourages people to give you their email so they can get the free resource. Now, what I see happening for a lot of women as they try to build their opt-in and build their list, is two things stop them from doing that well. One is they're not clear on their messaging. And the fear that I see that sits underneath that is the fear of really claiming a message. So that's more internal work than it is. It always looks like it's external work. So people are like, I don't know, there's this, or there's this, or there's this idea, or could I use this language? And actually what's happening is there's an inner fear of, who am I to claim this message? So this is why we always do first at the School of Visibility inner work, so that then the outer work becomes more effortless. So that's the first piece. The messaging isn't quite right on the opt-in. The second piece is there's insufficient clarity around who you're serving. And what I find about that is one of the core fears there is the fear of missing out. So what happens is that you get the encouragement to really get clear on who you want to serve, and then all of a sudden this fear comes up around, but if I just speak to them, what about all these other people I could help? And beneath all of that is that fear of missing out. There's a scarcity energy that runs through that, and there's there's almost a lack of trust that if I just speak to these one people, that will be enough. So that's what I encourage you. If you know the issue of who am I here to serve has been something that's been challenging for you, I encourage you to look at that issue of at the fear, the scarcity issue, and the fear of missing out. And then finally, once people get on your list, the other big problem I see is the problem with consistency. And a lot of that time that comes from looking at the way everybody else is engaging with their communities and assuming, oh, I have to do the same thing. I have to do it the way they do it. And what we do in Women Speaking Up is we talk about your natural way of being visible and understanding your the way you like to communicate, the way you like to connect, and your working style. So for some people, sending a short email a couple of times a week is going to be perfect. They're really good. They operate fast. They communicate just in a paragraph or so, and that works really well for them. For other people, that is an impossible ask. They're long and deep thinkers, and they have a lot to say, and they're better off probably, rather than trying to push to produce a long form piece of content every week, which then probably will overwhelm the community anyway. They're better off producing one a fortnight or one a month, where it's just every month, on the beginning of the month, your community knows, here comes this fantastic piece of long form content that I have got time to absorb and think about and reflect on, and so on and so forth. So there are two different ways that you might use your email list. For others, it might be, I'm just really consistent with once a week, and it's sort of medium length. And actually, what I really like is podcasting. So it's just really a link to my podcast. It's just, hi everyone, here's my podcast. So the core thing to take away from that is, one of the problems around consistency is the problem of putting other people's business models and visibility strategies onto you and assuming that's the way I have to do it, rather than finding your natural way. And then the confidence to claim that and say, yeah, that might not be the way that everybody else is doing it in the industry, but that's the way I'm going to do it because that works for me. When I first started blogging many years ago, 2008, everybody was blogging all the time, like every day. It was like, it was early in the days of people sending out email marketing and so forth. And so people were excited to get like all the emails in their inbox. And I sat with that, and I was coming off the back. I didn't know it at the time, but I was toward the very end of my healing journey with chronic fatigue. And I looked at that and I thought, there is no way that I can possibly do a daily blog. And even a weekly blog felt too much. I didn't have a lot of energy. I was sleeping still a lot of the time. I only really had a couple of hours a day to work. So I thought, well, what's reasonable for me? And that was when I went with a fortnightly schedule. So every 2 weeks I would post a blog. And what that meant was, because I hadn't put this enormous pressure on myself to overperform or over-deliver, which is another issue. The over-delivery issue is something that it's linked to the patriarchal conditioning. It's linked to the Google that I talk about a lot and needs to break down. But what it did was it enabled me to be consistent. It meant that every fortnight I absolutely could get it out the door. And it meant that at the end of a year, I can't remember the exact time frame, but I was in such a rhythm with it by then, and I had developed habits around producing the content that I could then up it to once a week. So minimum viable offering in terms of your content marketing, and then build the habits around that, and then build from there. Okay, I hope that's been helpful. It's pointed you to some of the inner work that's needed, as well as some of the external considerations. We go deep into this in Women Speaking Up. We're open for applications at the moment, and so if you want to check that out, that's at womenspeakingup.com. Okay, and I will see you next week.